The scissors were cold. That was the first thing she noticed, and she made herself notice it plainly, because a woman who lets herself feel the second thing before the first thing will not survive a household like this one. The blades were cold, and her sister Augusta's hand on her nape was warm, and the candle guttered on the little dressing table where Honora had been permitted for the length of this indignity to sit. "Hold still, dear," Augusta said, in that voice she used for horses and servants and Honora. "You'll only make it worse if you flinch." Honora did not flinch. She had trained the flinch out of herself, the year she turned 15, when the London aunt had said at a dinner where Honora was passing plates because there was no one else to pass them, that at least the linens would be well kept. She had heard that phrase so many times since, in so many mouths, that it now lived inside her like a piece of furniture she had learned to walk around in the dark. At least the linens will be well kept. A hank of dark hair fell across her lap. It was heavier than she expected, and warmer, as though it had carried some part of her in it that was now leaving. Honora did not look down. "There," said Augusta, pleased. "You see? You look almost proper. It was that great, heavy braid, making your face look larger. Now no one will remark on you at all. No one will remark on you at all." That was the kindness in her sister's voice, the little curl of triumph, the sound a person makes when they believe they are doing you a favor, by cutting off the part of you that they have decided is offending them. Honora looked at herself in the small glass Augusta held up. Her hair sat in a rough, uneven bob against her jaw, unruly where it had been fine, the ends jagged where scissors held by a jealous hand had done their work. It looked, she thought, like a child's mistake. It looked like a punishment. It looked, most of all, like a signal to anyone who cared to read it that she had submitted to something she had not been permitted to refuse. "Thank you," Honora said, because there was no useful thing to say. And the useful thing was always what she said. Her voice was steady. She had trained the voice too. A large woman with a shaking voice was a spectacle. A large woman with a steady voice was, at worst, an inconvenience. And inconveniences could still be underestimated, and to be underestimated was the only weapon she had ever been given. Augusta swept the cut hair into her handkerchief with the air of one who had done a good day's work. "The Duke arrives tomorrow at 4, she said. "I do not know why Papa insists you sit at the table when there are 3 of us already, and the seating will look absurd. But if you must sit there, you will at least not embarrass us with that great tangle. Wear the gray. The plum makes you look enormous. The plum makes you look enormous." And there it was, the bare phrase, deposited into the interior room where such phrases lived. Honora inclined her head. She said nothing. She listened to her sister's footsteps go down the passage and heard the door close. And only then did she permit her hand to rise to the shorn place at the back of her neck and touch it, once, with 2 cold fingertips. "Now you must understand, because a story like this asks you to understand, that there had been a mother once who would not have allowed this. There had been a mother who had brushed that heavy dark hair every night of Honora's childhood, and told her in a voice so warm and matter-of-fact it never occurred to Honora to disbelieve it, that she was a handsome girl, and that handsome girls did not marry the first fool who asked and did not shrink to fit rooms too small for them. That mother had died when Honora was 17. Since then, the rooms had been getting smaller. She rose. She dressed. She went down the back stairs, because the front stairs were being polished for tomorrow, and Augusta had said not to ruin them with her weight. And in the kitchen, the cook, Mistress Bellamy, looked up from the copper and looked at Honora's head and did not say anything at all, which was, Honora thought, greatest kindness anyone had offered her since morning. "Sit," Mistress Bellamy said. "Eat." You've had nothing since breakfast, and don't tell me you have. I saw the tray come back. Honora She ate the piece of bread and the slice of cold mutton Mistress Bellamy pushed in front of her. The kitchen smelled of onions and thyme and the faint iron of the range, and Mistress Bellamy, who had known Honora since she was a child of 4, hiding under this same table, went about the business of tomorrow's supper as though the world had not shifted a quarter turn in the last hour. He'll be here at 4, Mistress Bellamy said over her shoulder, cutting butter into a bowl. The Duke. Your father's had me trying to make chestnut soup in the middle of summer because someone told him dukes are partial to it. God knows who, Marcus. Honora said Marcus. His name is Marcus. My father said it 3 times this morning, as though it were his own Christian name. His Grace the Duke of Harrowmere. Marcus Ashcombe. Mistress Bellamy huffed. And what does the Duke of Harrowmere want with this house? Honora thought about the answer to that, and then she said the truthful part of it, which was, a wife. Well? Mistress Bellamy set the knife down. Not you, then. She said it not unkindly. She said it as one might say, not raining today. Then, a statement of the weather. Honora looked at her, at the woman who had wrapped her wrist when she fell out of the pear tree at 9 and told her mother it was nothing, so that Honora would not be scolded, and she smiled a very small, dry smile. No, she said, not me. Augusta, then. Or Prudence. Augusta, I should think. Prudence is too young. And Augusta has made a study of it. A study, Mistress Bellamy said, and there was in her voice the very faintest edge of contempt, which she permitted herself only in this kitchen, and only when the door was closed. She's made a study. Honora ate the mutton. She did not touch the shorn place again. She had decided, somewhere between the dressing table and the kitchen stairs, that she would neither hide it nor draw attention to it. She would wear it as she wore everything else that had been done to her. As fact. That night, she did not sleep well. She lay in her narrow bed at the top of the house, the room Augusta had chosen for her. 3 years ago, when their father had grown frail, and Augusta had begun to arrange the household to her own taste, and she listened to the wind in the elms and thought, once, of writing her mother's name in the frost of the window pane. It was a habit from childhood. On very cold mornings, she would breathe on the glass, and trace the letters, Cecily, and watch them fade. Her mother had done it first, showing her, laughing. The mark need not last, her mother had said. To be real. She did not do it now. It was August, and the pane was warm, and there was no frost anywhere in the house except in the rooms where her sisters lived. The Duke came at 10 minutes past 4. Honora watched him arrive from the window of the little sewing room, which had a slantwise view of the drive. He came in a plain traveling coach, plainer than she had expected, and stepped down without waiting for the footman, and stood a moment in the sunshine, looking at the front of the house as though he were assessing, not its architecture, but its truthfulness. He was tall. He had the sort of build that made greatcoats sit well on him. His face at that distance was unremarkable in the way that faces are unremarkable when their owners have long since ceased performing them for onlookers. He turned once, and Honora saw him notice. She was certain of it. The boy who was holding the near horse and was too small for the job and was struggling with it. He crossed to the boy and said something. He put a hand briefly on the horse's shoulder. He waited until the boy had a better grip, and only then did he go to the door. He noticed the boy. He noticed the tired horse. He noticed the front step where the polish had smeared and had not been redone. She stepped back from the window. She had, until that moment, decided to be nothing more than a piece of furniture at the supper table. Now, without being able to say precisely why, she decided to be a piece of furniture that was paying attention. Augusta had done herself that afternoon in the ivory silk with the seed pearls at the collar, and she stood at the top of the drawing-room stairs, like a woman who had been rehearsing the descent since Michaelmas. Prudence, 16 and skittish, wore blue. Their father, whose gout had made him querulous, and whose querulousness had made him easy to steer, wore his best coat, and had arranged himself in the chair nearest the fireplace, as though the fireplace lent him gravity. Honora wore the gray. She had brushed the shorn hair back from her face as best she could, and pinned it with 2 plain steel pins. The Duke was announced. He came in. He bowed. "Your Grace," said Augusta, in a voice Honora had never heard her use before, silk with a hairline of steel in it. "We are most honored, Miss Vane," he said. He bowed to their father. He bowed to Prudence, who curtsied and reddened and said nothing. He turned toward Honora, and Honora, standing a little behind her father's chair, as she had been instructed, prepared to be looked past. He did not look past. He looked at her. He looked at her steadily for the length of one full breath, and his eyes went, once, briefly, deliberately, to her hair, and then back to her face. There was nothing on his face at all. But something in the room shifted, the way a room shifts when a person walks in who is not deceived. "Miss Honora," he said. He knew her name. Someone had told him her name. "Your Grace," she said. She did not curtsy deeper than the occasion required. She did not smile. She had trained the smile out too. "You are the eldest," he said, not quite a question. "I am. I understood there were 3. There are," he said with the courtesy of a man who has been raised to be courteous even when he is measuring the ground beneath him. "It is a pleasure to meet all 3. Then he turned to her father, and Honora, who had been prepared to remain a piece of furniture, found that a small, careful thing had happened inside her chest, which she did not name, and did not permit under her face. At supper, they seated him beside Augusta. He was courteous to Augusta. He asked after her health, her interests, her opinion on the weather and the roads. He was courteous to Prudence, who giggled once and then remembered herself. He was courteous to their father, whom he treated with a grave patience that had the surprising effect of steadying the old man and making him less querulous than Honora had seen him in months. He did not, through the soup and the fish and the beginning of the second course, address Honora at all. She had not expected him to. She had prepared not to expect him to. What she had not prepared for was the awareness. An awareness she carried in her shoulders, and in the muscles of her jaw, and in the space just behind her breastbone, that he was watching her. Not looking. Watching. He watched, she noticed, the way she moved the salt cellar closer to her father's plate without being asked, because her father's hand shook now, and the reaching was hard. He watched her thank the footman, quietly, when the footman refilled her glass. He watched her ignore, without any visible cost, a small, thin comment Augusta made about the sitting of her sleeves. He watched her, in short, the way he had watched the boy with the horse. And here is the thing about a man like Marcus Ashcombe, and it is the thing the young ladies of the county had never worked out, and their mothers had worked out too late. He did not attend to a room the way other men of his rank attended to a room. He attended to it the way a man attends to a room he intends to be responsible for. He noticed the tired footman. He noticed the laughter, pitched a shade too loud on his left. He noticed the smudge of chestnut soup on the cuff of Augusta's ivory silk, which she had not yet seen, and would be furious about later. He noticed the second sister's terror and the father's pride and the eldest daughter's stillness. He noticed, most of all, the hair. He said nothing about it. He would not have said anything about it in any company. But when at last, between the removal of the roast and the setting down of the sweet, he turned his head and addressed her, his first direct question to her of the evening, his voice was very quiet, and pitched so that the others could hear it perfectly clearly, and he did not soften the shape of it with any preamble at all. "Miss Honora," he said, "who cut your hair?" The room went still. Augusta had been raising her glass. She did not put it down. She held it exactly where it was, a small fixed point of ivory silk and cut crystal. Prudence looked at her plate. Their father, whose hearing was not what it had been but whose instinct for the shift of a room had never failed him, put his knife down. The footman at the sideboard did not move. Honora looked at the Duke. She had in her life been asked many questions in company that were designed to expose her. What she noticed about this question was that it had not been designed to expose her. It had been designed to expose the room. She said, "My sister was kind enough to trim it for me last evening." "Your Grace Augusta's glass came down?" "Not hard." "Precisely kind," said the Duke, testing the word. "Very kind," said Honora. "I see," he said. He picked up his own glass. He turned it once between his fingers. He did not look at Augusta. He looked instead at Honora, and there was in his face, for the first time that evening, and only for a fraction of a moment, and only, she believed, for her to see, the flicker of something that was not pity. Something warmer than that, and drier, and a great deal more useful. Something that said, "I have seen this before. I know exactly what has been done, and I will not pretend that I have not." "It is unusual," he said to the table at large, "to see a lady of the house wear her hair so. But then, I find that fashion is a poor guide to character. I have known the most exquisitely coiffured women to be perfect fools, and the plainest to be the making of great houses." He set the glass down. "You will forgive the observation. I have traveled with too many pretty women lately." He said it lightly. He said it so lightly that Augusta could not, without appearing to admit the wound, take offense. Prudence, who had understood only part of it, looked up. Their father, who had understood all of it, made a small sound that was neither a cough nor a laugh, but sat between them like a man's private acknowledgment that his eldest daughter had for once been defended at his own table. "Miss Honora," said the Duke, and now he was speaking only to her, and the room was leaning to hear, "how do you spend your days here?" She might have answered many ways. She might have said, "I read," or "I paint," or "I embroider," which was the answer a girl was supposed to give. She looked at him, at the plain, grave, attentive face across her father's supper, and she decided to answer truthfully, because he had asked a question that expected the truth. "I run the household, Your Grace." "Do you?" "Since my mother's death." "Not your sister?" "No." "How old were you when your mother died?" 17, and the accounts?" "I keep them." "All of them?" "All of them." He nodded once, slowly, as one nods at a stone that has turned out to be a fossil. "Your father is fortunate," he said, and he said it to her father, and her father, who had for years accepted Honora's work as one accepts the weather, sat up a little straighter and said gruff and startled, "Yes, yes, I am." Augusta said brightly, "Honora has always been so good at that sort of thing. Numbers and lists and menus, it is her particular gift." "Yes," said the Duke, without looking at Augusta at all. "I imagine it is." He did not ask any more questions that evening. He stayed the required 2 hours after supper. He drank one small glass of port. He spoke to their father about the state of the roads north, and to Augusta about a mutual acquaintance in London, and to Prudence about her horse. He did not address Honora again. When he rose to take his leave, he bowed to each of them in the same measured way, and when he came to Honora last, he said only, "Good evening, Miss Honora." His eyes were on her face, and not on her hair. She said, "Good evening, Your Grace." He was gone. The door closed. Augusta whirled, and Honora braced. But the storm did not come, or rather it came sideways, because Augusta had realized in the second half of the evening that something had shifted, and she did not yet know what. She said only, sharply, "You spoke a great deal for a woman who was meant to sit quietly," and swept upstairs. Prudence followed. Their father, who did not move from his chair, said after a long silence, "Honora." "Yes, Papa, come here." She came. He looked up at her shorn head, at her plain gray dress. He put his old spotted hand on her wrist. "I did not see," he said. She did not answer. There was nothing to answer. "I will speak to your sister," he said. She did not tell him not to. She only pressed his hand once, helped him to his feet, and rang for his man to take him up to bed. And when she was alone in the drawing room, standing among the empty glasses, she looked at herself for a long moment, in the mirror over the mantel, and she reached up, and she touched the shorn place, and this time she did not do it in secret, and she did not do it in shame. She did it as one touches a mark of something that has been survived. 2 days later, a letter came. It was addressed to her father in the Duke's own hand, a plain hand, unornamented, the hand of a man who had learned to write in a schoolroom and never troubled to make it prettier. Her father read it in his study with the door closed. He rang for Honora. "Sit down," he said. She sat. "His Grace," said her father, "wishes to renew his acquaintance with this family. He proposes to call again the day after tomorrow. He asks that on that occasion he be permitted a private audience with me." "With you," Honora said. "With me? On what subject?" Her father looked at her over the letter. He was not a stupid man. He had merely been an inattentive one, and in the last 2 days something in him had been shocked back into attention, and he was in no mood now to insult his eldest daughter by pretending. "Honora," he said, "he means to propose." "To Augusta," said Honora. "He does not name Augusta." She sat very still. "He does not name any of you," her father said. "He asks only for a private audience with me, at which he intends to discuss, and I quote him, an arrangement that concerns the future of a member of this household." "That could mean anything," said Honora. "It could," her father agreed. "But he wrote it, and he chose those words. And he is not a man who chooses words carelessly." She looked down at her hands. Her hands, at least, were unmistakably hers. They were large. They were capable. They were at that moment perfectly steady. "Papa," she said, "when he comes, I should like to be present." "That is not the custom." "I know it is not." Her father looked at her a long time, then he said, "Very well, but—" He came at the appointed hour. He was shown this time directly to the study, and their father received him there, and Honora, who had told Augusta only that she would be occupied with the linen room that afternoon, and had thereby purchased her sister's contempt and her absence in a single stroke, stood by the window in the study, because she had decided that if she was going to be present, she was going to be visible. The Duke came in. He saw her. He was not surprised. "Miss Honora," he said. "Your Grace." Her father cleared his throat. "My daughter has expressed a wish to be present." "I am glad of it," said the Duke. He sat where her father indicated. He set his gloves and hat on the corner of the desk, with the neatness of a man who had spent a lifetime being watched. He looked first at her father. "Sir," he said, "I will be plain with you, because plainness is the only courtesy I have to offer. I am 40 years old. I was married once. My wife died 4 years ago in the birth of our second child, who did not survive her by more than an hour. I have one son, he is 6. He has not spoken above a whisper since the day his mother died, and he has driven off 4 governesses and 1 aunt, and I am told by every physician in the county that there is nothing to be done for him, and by every dowager in the county that what he needs is a mother." He paused. He did not look at Honora. He looked at her father. "I have been offered, in the last 4 years, a great many candidates for the position. I have refused them all, because I am not a fool, and I do not intend to bring into that house a woman my son will hate. 2 evenings ago, I came to this house, on the recommendation of an old friend of my late mother's, who wrote to me that there was in this county a young woman of intelligence and steadiness whom no one had noticed because her family had made a habit of not noticing her. I came prepared to be skeptical. I sat at your table for 2 hours. I watched your eldest daughter run your household from her seat. I watched her be insulted by her sister and answer with grace. I watched her defend her father's dignity without letting him know it was being defended. I watched her tell me the truth when I asked her a question that any other woman in this county would have lied to answer. And I have come today to ask, sir, for her hand. Silence. Her father, who had known this was coming and had still not been ready for it, said only, "You have not spoken to her." "I have not," said the Duke. "I intend to now." He turned. He looked at her. "Miss Honora," he said, "I am not offering you a love match. I am offering you a marriage of practical necessity. I need a mother for my son and a mistress for my house, and I need her within the month, because my late wife's brother has filed a petition for guardianship of the child on the grounds that a widower who has not remarried in 4 years is not a fit sole parent, and the hearing is on the 23rd of September. I need a wife by the 10th. I need a wife by the 10th. She heard it land. She heard the deadline sit down in the middle of the room like a stone. "Your Grace," she said, and her voice was steady because she had trained the voice. "Before I answer anything, you will tell me the truth. All of it. I do not bargain with half a story. Ask. Is your brother-in-law a bad man?" "He is not a bad man. He is a grieving one. He believes I have failed his sister's child, and he has some grounds for believing it. Because I have failed him, and I have failed him not from cruelty, but from cowardice. Because every time I looked at him I saw his mother, and I could not bear it. I have not been in that nursery above 3 times in a year." He said it flat. He said it as a man says a debt. "His name," said Honora. "My son." "Yes. Theodore. How old was he when his mother died?" 2. "What did they tell him?" The Duke was silent for a moment. Then he said, "That is the part I would rather not have said aloud, but I will say it. His aunt, my wife's sister, was in the house at the time of the birth. She was distressed. She has since been sent away, but before she was sent away, she told the child he was 2. He remembers it, I do not know how, but he remembers it. That his crying in the night before had tired his mother and had weakened her for the birth. She told him he had made his mother ill. She told him his voice was what had done it. The room was very quiet. That is why he does not speak," said Honora. "Yes. He believes his voice killed her." "Yes." She stood up. She walked once, slowly to the window and back. She had learned at the dressing table with Augusta's scissors that when a thing must be done one does not gain anything by delay. She turned. "Your Grace," she said, "I will accept your offer. On conditions. Name them. I will not enter your house as decoration. I will not be ignored until needed. I will have authority over the nursery from the day I arrive, and no aunt, no cousin, no former governess, and no physician will countermand me in it without your explicit written support. Your late wife will not be erased. Her portrait will hang where it hangs. If she had a hymn, we will sing it. If she had a way of doing a thing, we will keep the way. And I will not pretend to be her, and I will not permit anyone to pretend I am. If your son does not speak for a year, I will not be dismissed for it, and if he does speak, I will not be praised for it. Because it will not be my doing, it will be his. And you will not tell me you love me until you mean it. And if you never mean it, you will not tell me. And I will not require you to." He listened. He did not interrupt. When she had finished, he said quietly, "Agreed? All of it. All of it. I will put it in writing if you wish. I wish. Then it will be done today." Her father, who had been watching this exchange with the expression of a man who has just discovered that the eldest daughter he had for years thought of as his housekeeper was in fact a person he had never met, said hoarsely, "Honora." She turned. "Papa, you are certain?" "I am certain." "He is," her father began, and then he stopped. And he looked at the Duke, and he said, with the odd late dignity that comes sometimes to a man who has been asleep for years, "You will be good to her, sir." "I will endeavor," said the Duke, "to be worthy of her." "That is not the same thing." "No, sir, it is a harder thing, but I mean it." They were married 11 days later, in the small parish church at Harrowmere, without a wedding breakfast, without a gown of ivory silk with seed pearls, without Augusta, who did not come, and without Prudence, who did but who did not stop crying and could not have said why. Honora wore a dress of dark green wool that had been her mother's, altered by Mistress Bellamy, who had come with her, as a wedding gift from her father. So said the letter, though in truth Mistress Bellamy had refused to be left behind, and had told the old man plainly that if he wished to keep her in his kitchen, he might do so over her corpse. The Duke wore his usual plain coat. There were 4 witnesses. The vicar read the words. Honora said what she was required to say, and Marcus Ashcombe said what he was required to say, and when he put the ring on her hand, he did so with a care that startled her, as though he were setting a small living thing on a windowsill and did not wish to frighten it. They traveled to Harrowmere in silence. She watched the country change through the carriage window. She thought once of writing her name in the glass with her breath, and she did not. And she noticed him, noticing that she had thought of it, and had not done it. And she said, "Dry, it is August, your grace, there is no frost." "There will be," he said. She looked at him. "I mean, only," he said, "that winter comes." And then, for the first time since she had known him, he smiled, not fully, only at the corner of his mouth, only for her. It was, she thought, a very small smile for such a large piece of news that winter came, and that they would be together in it. Harrowmere was, as she had been told, cold. Not in temperature, it was August, and the house stood in a bowl of green hills, and the light through the long windows was warm honey. Cold in the other way? Cold in the way a house is cold when no one has lit a fire in its heart in 4 years. The servants stood in the entrance hall in a long line, and they were correct, and they were watchful, and they did not smile. The housekeeper, a Mistress Kettering with a face like a good clock, curtsied. The steward bowed. The butler bowed. Down the line, at the very end, stood a woman in the plain gray of a nursery maid. And beside her, half hidden behind her skirts, was a small boy in a black coat. Honora went down the line as she had been trained. She said the right things to each. When she came to the nursery maid, she said, "Your name, Bess, your grace. You have been with Theodore since? Since his mother died, your grace?" "Thank you," said Honora, and meant it, and Bess's eyes flickered once as though someone had said an unexpected kind thing in a room that had forgotten the sound. Then Nora crouched down. She was a large woman, and it was not a graceful movement, and she did not care, because she needed her face to be at the level of the child's face, and there was no other way to do it. The boy did not look at her. He looked at the marble of the floor. "Theodore," she said, "I am Honora." He did not speak. "I know," she said. "You are not obliged to say anything. I only wanted you to hear my voice, so that it is not a strange one tomorrow." He did not look up. But she saw at the corner of his mouth a small tightening. The tightening of a child who is not going to give you anything and yet has been touched by something in spite of himself. She stood up. She did not touch him. She said to Bess, "I will come to the nursery at 6:30, not before. He is not to be told to expect me, and he is not to be prepared. I would like to find you as you are." "Yes, your grace." She turned to the Duke, who had watched the whole of this exchange from 3 steps behind her, with his face perfectly still. "Your grace," she said, "I should like to see the house." "Marcus," he said. She paused. "I should like to see the house." "When we are alone," he said. "If you would." "Marcus," she said. "Then, Marcus, I should like to see the house." He showed her the house. He showed her the long gallery, where his mother's portrait hung, and the small portrait of his late wife hung beside it. Honora stopped in front of the late wife's portrait, and looked at it a long time. The woman had been fair. She had been slight. She had had a small chin and a slightly amused mouth, and she had been painted holding a book with her finger, keeping her place, and she looked in her stillness as though she had been about to say something clever, and had decided instead to be patient with the painter. "Her name," said Honora. "Adelaide." "She was clever." "Yes." "You loved her." "Yes." "I will not move this portrait," said Honora. "It stays exactly here. If Theodore wishes to speak to it, he will find it where it has always been." He did not answer. He did not have to. She heard the small breath he did not take. She went to the nursery at 6:30. Bess had not prepared. Theodore was sitting on the floor by the low window, with a small wooden horse in his hand, moving it slowly across the pattern of the rug. Honora came in without ceremony, and sat down in the chair by the fire, which was not lit, and took out from her work-basket the mending she had brought with her. Bess's own apron, which she had noticed at the entrance line, had a tear at the pocket, and she began, quietly, to sew. The boy watched her out of the corner of his eye. He did not stop moving the horse. She did not speak. She sewed for 20 minutes. Then she said, without looking at him, "There is a curtain in this room that has not been opened since your mother died. I know this because the rod is stiff. I would like to open it tomorrow morning, because the light comes in on that side, and this room is dark, and I think your mother would have wanted the light. But I will not open it if you do not wish it. It is your room." The boy did not answer. She had not expected him to. She finished the mending and folded the apron and put it on the arm of the chair. "Good night, Theodore," she said. She rose. She went to the door. She was almost through it when, behind her, so faint she almost missed it, so faint she was afterwards not certain she had heard it at all, a small dry voice said, "Open it." She did not turn. She did not react. She said only over her shoulder, as though she had heard nothing remarkable at all, "Very well. Tomorrow morning." She closed the door. She stood in the passage. She permitted herself, for one breath, to lean her forehead against the wood. Then she went down to her supper, because a large woman with a shaking voice was a spectacle, and a large woman with a shaking hand was worse. The days at Harrowmere took on a shape. She opened the curtain, she opened others. She did not redecorate. She was too clever for that. She knew that the great trap of the second wife is the redecoration, the erasure that masquerades as improvement. But she opened windows, and she lit fires, and she asked Mistress Kettering plainly and without threat what had been done in this house in the late Duchess's time that had since been let go. And she began to do those things again. The chestnut soup, as it turned out, had been Adelaide's soup. Honora asked Mistress Bellamy to learn it. The hymn Adelaide had sung to Theodore was one the housekeeper remembered. Honora had it copied out and put in the pianoforte bench. Though she did not sing it, because she could not sing well, and would not counterfeit what she could not do. She wrote letters. She wrote to Adelaide's brother, whose name was Rupert Marwood, and whose petition for guardianship still stood, and she wrote to him plainly. She said that she was the new Duchess. She said that she understood he was grieving. She said that she had no intention of replacing his sister, and that his sister's portrait hung where it had always hung, and that her hymn was in the pianoforte bench, and that her chestnut soup was on Tuesdays. She said that he was welcome at Harrowmere at any hour of any day, and that if he wished to see his nephew, he had only to write. She sent it. She did not receive a reply. She kept the ledgers. This was the thing no one had told her she would find. And it was, in its way, the thing that saved her. The Harrowmere books were in disarray, not through theft, she saw quickly, but through inattention, through 4 years of a widower who had not been able to bear the sight of his own household. She sat in the small estate office 3 afternoons a week, and she went through them, page by page, tenant by tenant, quarter by quarter, and she began, quietly, to bring them into order. The steward, who was an honest man called Ellsworth, and who had watched 3 previous mistresses come and go without touching the books, watched her do this with the expression of a man who has been alone at a task for a long time and has just discovered he is not. Marcus watched her too. This she felt more than saw. He came to the estate office sometimes on the pretext of a paper, and he stood behind her chair for a moment, and he went away. He came to the nursery in the evenings, and sat on the low chair by the window without speaking, and Theodore looked at him, and looked at her, and moved his wooden horse in silence, and Honora sewed, and no one said anything. And it was, she thought, the beginning of a family made of held breaths. The boy began, in small ways, to trust her. She did not push him. She did not ask him to speak. She read aloud to him in the evenings, and did not require him to acknowledge that she was reading. She made herself boring and consistent, because she had understood from the first night that what had been done to that child had been dramatic, and that the antidote to drama was not more drama. He needed a woman who would not leave. So she was quite deliberately, and quite openly, a woman who would not leave. One evening in September he brought her the wooden horse. He put it on the arm of her chair without a word. He went back to the window. She did not touch it. She said, "Thank you. I will keep it safe until you want it back." He did not answer. But at the door of the nursery, going out to his bed with Bess, he turned and looked at her. The first full look he had given her, and she saw for one flashing moment the face of a child who was thinking about being seen. She wrote to Rupert Marwood again. She invited him, specifically, to come the following week. She had, she said, something she wished to discuss with him before the hearing. She did not say what. He came. He was a tall, thin man with Adelaide's chin and none of her amusement. He came into the drawing-room like a man walking into a house he had once loved and now suspected of a crime. Honora rose to meet him. Marcus stood by the window, silent. "Mr. Marwood," Honora said, "thank you for coming." "Your Grace," he said. He said it flatly. "I asked you here because I wanted to say to you, in your own hearing, what I have said to my husband and to my staff. I did not marry the Duke to replace your sister. I could not, I would not. Your sister's portrait hangs in the gallery. Her hymn is in the pianoforte bench. Her chestnut soup is served on Tuesdays. Her son sleeps in the same room he has always slept in, under the same coverlet she chose. Nothing of hers has been moved. Nothing of hers will be moved. This is not because I am generous. It is because it is the truth of the house, and I do not lie for a living." He watched her. He did not soften. "You will still take the child," he said. "I will not take the child. I will love the child. There is a difference, and you know it. He was 2 when she died. I know. He has not spoken since. He has spoken to me twice." Silence. "What did he say?" said Rupert Marwood. He told me to open a curtain, said Honora. And 2 nights ago when I asked him whether he wished me to blow out his candle or leave it, he said, leave it. Those are his words. I am not embroidering them. Marwood sat down. He had not been going to sit down. He sat down, as though something had gone out of his knees. There is one more thing, Honora said. You told him, or someone told him in your hearing, and you did not correct it, that his voice tired his mother and made her weak for the birth. Your sister, a woman I never met and now grieve, because you have all made her real to me, has been dead for 4 years. And for 4 years her child has believed he killed her, by crying. I do not know whether you knew this. I hope you did not. But it has been said in this house, and it has kept a small boy silent, and I will spend the rest of my life undoing it. And if you go through with your petition, and take him from this house, you will take him back into the room where it was said, and you will not undo it, because you do not know how. He was silent a very long time. I did not know, he said at last. God forgive me, I did not know. Then withdraw the petition, said Honora. Not because I ask you to, but because he needs the house that will heal him, and not the house that made him ill. He put his face in his hands. She let him have his moment. She did not press. When he lifted his face, he looked at Marcus, at the window, and Marcus looked back at him, and something passed between the 2 men that Honora, who had known them each, for a matter of weeks, did not have the standing to read but recognized nevertheless as the beginning of forgiveness. I will withdraw it, said Rupert Marwood. He rose. He crossed to Honora, and he did the thing she had not expected any brother of Adelaide's to do. He took her hand in both of his, and he pressed it once briefly. You are not what I expected, Your Grace. No, said Honora. I rarely am. He left. The petition was withdrawn the next morning in writing, delivered by his own man. The hearing on the 23rd of September did not take place. The house went on. You would think, would you not, that this was the end of it? But men are slow, child, and dukes are slowest of all. And grief makes fools of the cleverest of us. Because Marcus Ashcombe, who had stood by the window through the whole of that conversation, and had watched his wife dismantle 4 years of injury with the plainness of a woman speaking about linens, went upstairs, after Marwood's carriage had rolled away, and did not come down for supper. And when Honora, at 9:30, went up to find him, she found him in the small study at the end of the long gallery, in the dark, sitting in a chair, with his hands on his knees and his head bowed, as though he were praying and could not quite remember how. She did not turn up the lamp. She sat down opposite him. Marcus. He did not answer. Marcus. I have been, he said, and his voice was not steady, and this was the first time she had heard it not steady, a coward for 4 years. She said nothing. I let a child grow up believing he was a murderer, he said, because I could not bear to go into the room where his mother had died. I paid governesses to raise him. I told myself I was protecting him from my grief. I was protecting myself from his. I was a coward, and I have been a coward, and I would still be a coward if you had not come into this house. You are not a coward. Now I am. I am, because there is a thing I have wanted to say to you for 2 weeks, and I have not said it, because I am afraid of what you will answer. She waited. Do not, she said, when he did not go on. Say it if it is only gratitude. I do not want gratitude. I have enough gratitude in this house to last me all my life. I do not need it from you. It is not gratitude. Then what is it? He looked up. His face in the dark was not a duke's face. It was a man's face. It was tired and unguarded, and older than his age, and younger too, and it was. She saw with a small, clean shock the face of a man who had been alone for so long, he had forgotten there was another way to be. You are beautiful, he said. She was silent. I know, he said, that a great many people have told you a great many other things about your person for a great many years. I have watched your sister, and I have watched your father. And I have watched a room full of my own servants adjust themselves to a woman of your size. And I know what has been said to you, and I know what has been said around you, and I am telling you plainly, because plainness is the only courtesy I have to offer, that I find you beautiful. I did the evening I met you, when a woman had cut your hair to shame you, and you sat at your father's table and let no one see it hurt. I did in the study when you set your conditions and did not soften one of them. I did at the entrance line when you knelt down to a boy who was hiding from you and did not care that the movement was not graceful. I did today, when you took a grieving man's hand and told him the truth in his sister's memory. I have been finding you beautiful for 2 months, and I have not said it because I was afraid you would think it was gratitude. And I do not want you to think it is gratitude. I want you to know it is fact. Honora, who had trained the flinch out of herself, and the smile out of herself, and the shaking voice out of herself, discovered that she had not trained the crying out of herself, because she was crying, silently, without moving, in the dark of the small study. She let the tears go. She did not lift her hand to them. "Marcus," she said, "yes, I have loved you since the evening in my father's study, when you said you would endeavor to be worthy of me. I did not tell you, because I did not think you would want to know. I want to know." "Then know it." He stood. He crossed to her. He was a man who had been trained never to reach, and he reached now, and he took her face, her large, full face that had been sized up and dismissed and remarked upon in 100 drawing rooms, in both his hands, and he kissed her, plainly, without practice, without technique, without any of the polish that a Duke of 40 is supposed to have brought to such a moment, and it was the most honest kiss she had ever been given, and she suspected, the most honest kiss he had ever given. When he lifted his head, he said, "I did not know it was possible to be this glad." "In one's own house," she said. "I did not know it was possible to be at home." They went down together. The house was quiet. Bess was on the nursery landing, and she was smiling. A small private smile she did not know was visible. And Mistress Kettering was in the hall, pretending she had been checking the fire and had not been checking the master's study, and Mistress Bellamy was on the kitchen stairs with a tray she did not need to carry, and all of them, in the small ways servants have, of blessing a house without being asked, blessed it. Now, the story could end here, and in a lesser telling it would. But there is one more evening to describe, because a story like this one does not truly end until the child has spoken, and until the room has heard him. It was Christmas Eve. The great hall at Harrowmere was lit, for the first time in 4 years, with every candle it had. Honora had ordered it, not with fanfare, only with a quiet word to Mistress Kettering the week before, that the candles were to come down from the store cupboard and be counted and lit, all of them. Adelaide had loved Christmas. It was in the household books, it was in Bess's memory, it had been let go with everything else, and Honora had decided in her methodical way that it would not be let go this year. Her father had come from the south. He was frail, but he had come, and he sat by the fire with a rug over his knees, and watched his eldest daughter move through her own house with a proprietor's calm, and he did not say what he was thinking, but Honora saw him watching her, and once when she passed his chair, he caught her hand and held it a moment longer than was necessary. And she understood that the old man was at last sorry, and that being sorry was a thing he had not known how to do until now. Augusta had not come. Prudence had. Prudence had grown 3 inches and lost some of her flinch, and she followed Honora about the house with an expression of frank astonishment, and at one point she said, in the small sitting room where they were alone, "You are happy." "Yes." "I did not think you would be." "Neither did I. Was it because of him?" "No," said Honora. "It was because of me. He only made it possible. The rest I did." Prudence had thought about that for a long moment and had not answered, but Honora saw her tuck it away. Rupert Marwood had come too. This had been Honora's doing. She had written to him in November, and told him plainly that Theodore was his nephew and that she would not have the boy grow up not knowing his mother's brother, and Marwood had come, and he had brought a small carved box that had been Adelaide's when she was a child, who had opened it and looked inside and closed it again, had looked up at his uncle, and had said, "Quiet." Still, quiet, but audible in the room. "Thank you, uncle." Marwood had turned away from the assembled company then, and had walked to the window, and had stood there for a long minute before he could turn back. Now it was the evening service. They had walked, all of them together, down the frost-hardened path to the little parish church, and the vicar had done the readings, and the small congregation of tenants and servants and household had sung the carols, and Theodore had stood between Honora and Marcus, and had held Honora's hand the whole way through. And then, at the end, before the last hymn, Honora had leaned down to him, and had said, quietly, "Thee, your mother's hymn. Do you remember it?" He had nodded. "Would you like it sung tonight?" He had nodded again. "Will you sing it?" she had said. With me he had looked up at her. His small face in the candlelight had been very serious. "You cannot sing," he had whispered, Bess said. "No," said Honora, "I cannot, but I can try. And if I try badly, you will have to help me." He had thought about it. He had looked at his father, who had been listening with his head bent, as though he did not trust himself to look directly at either of them. He had looked back at Honora. "All right," he said. She stood, she spoke, quietly to the vicar, who nodded. The last hymn was announced. Honora, who could not sing, opened her mouth and began, and her voice was not good, and the congregation was startled, and one or two of the older women looked at each other. And then, from beside her, small and clear and unmistakably audible, a boy's voice took up the second line, and joined her, and steadied her. And because his own voice was better than hers, because Adelaide had had a good voice, and had passed it on, carried her through to the end of the hymn, the church was silent when it was done. Then Theodore, still holding her hand, still looking at the altar, said, not loudly, but loudly enough for the front pews to hear, and for the vicar to hear, and for his father to hear, and for his uncle to hear, "That was Mama's hymn." "Yes," said Honora, "I sang it," he said. He sounded surprised. "You did. I did not know I still could." She knelt down. She was large, and it was not graceful, and she did not care. She took his face in her hands as his father had taken hers in the study, and she said, so that the whole front of the church heard it and could not unhear it, "Theodore Ashcombe, your voice did not make your mother ill. Your voice is the best thing she left in this world. Do you understand me?" He looked at her, his eyes filled. "Yes," he said. "Say it." "My voice did not make her ill again. My voice did not make her ill once more. My voice did not make her ill." Marcus. Behind her,